everyone, and good evening. Welcome to the Linglobe channel. This time, we'll be bringing you content about preserving the world's languages for the future. Please enjoy it to the end.
Linglobe voice tour. Imagine trying to build a vibrant, enduring civilization in a place where literally just drawing a breath is a constant physical challenge.
Yeah, it's hard to even wrap your head around.
Right, because we usually think of great cultures blossoming in these, fertile river valleys or protected coastal bays, places where nature kind of provides a welcoming safety net.
Yes, I have.
But what happens when the environment is so extreme, like so relentlessly unforgiving, that every single aspect of daily life has to function as a masterpiece of survival? I mean, from the clothes on your back to the actual shape of your alphabet.
Well, it fundamentally rewrites the calculus of human existence. When you're living at altitudes where, oxygen is scarce, arable land is super rare, and the winters are just merciless, your culture cannot afford the luxury of separating the practical from the spiritual.
Oh, wow. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, everything just has to integrate perfectly. The physical environment acts as this crucible, really, forging a society where adaptation is woven into the very fabric of who they are.
And nature certainly didn't make the Tibetan Plateau easy. It forced the people there to turn survival into an absolute art form. So today, Linglobe on we are examining this incredibly detailed 15-part framework.
It's a fantastic set of materials.
It really is. It maps out exactly how this works, step by step. We're going to explore a culture where extreme geography, language, and spirituality are basically completely inseparable.
Right, and the progression of these slides is so logical.
Exactly. So let's jump right in. Our first slide is titled The High Altitude Heritage, and it establishes this striking baseline for our entire discussion. Basically, we can't begin to understand the Tibetan word, their spirit, or their survival without first confronting the sheer biological reality of the roof of the world. I mean, just looking at the source imagery, the scale of these mountains is staggering.
It really is. And, the term roof of the world is often treated as just this poetic imagery, but this slide emphasizes that it's a harsh topographical reality.
Yeah.
The altitude is the silent primary architect of everything we're going to discuss today. It dictates the carrying capacity of the land, which in turn dictates how far communities literally have to spread out just to find enough resources to live.
Which brings us perfectly to the next visual. That massive geographical footprint is mapped out on our second slide, titled Life on the Roof of the World.
Right.
Because I think there's this common misconception that Tibet is just a single, neatly drawn province on a map somewhere. But the materials show this vast spread. The primary region is the Tibet Autonomous Region of China, but the cultural and provincial footprint bleeds heavily across Qinghai, Sichuan, Gansu, and Yunnan.
It's an immense ethno-linguistic sphere. And crucially, this slide also introduces the Himalayan diaspora.
Oh, right, the communities outside the main plateau.
Exactly. We see significant enduring Tibetan communities established in India, specifically in hubs like Dharamshala and Ladakh, as well as across Nepal and Bhutan. Yeah, it reveals this fascinating duality. The culture is deeply, almost biologically rooted to its native high-altitude plateau, yet it possesses the structural resilience to maintain its core identity across completely different international borders and, frankly, different Himalayan microclimates.
Surviving across such a fragmented, brutally difficult terrain naturally begs the question, how do you keep a population like that unified?
You need a massive gravitational pull.
Right, you really would. And the slide titled The Genesis of an Empire points to the 7th century and this figure named King Songtsen Gampo. The text frames him as this master geopolitical architect. He unified the plateau and forged early diplomatic relations with China, India, and Nepal.
But as we know, military and political unification usually fractures once the leader dies.
Exactly, empires crumble.
Which is why the empire's truest, most lasting legacy wasn't its borders at all. The slide highlights two massive cultural shifts that occurred during this era: a spiritual awakening and a literary birth.
Okay, break that down for us.
Well, this was the period when Buddhism was initially introduced to the plateau. Songtsen Gampo realized that to unify a vast, scattered population of nomads and farmers, you need something way stronger than just laws.
Right.
You need a shared cosmic architecture.
A shared cosmic architecture. I love that phrasing. But introducing a highly complex philosophical religion from India into the high Himalayas creates a massive logistical problem, right?
Oh, huge.
Because to study Buddhism, you need the texts. And to read the texts, you need a written language capable of capturing those really abstract concepts.
Precisely. They didn't just passively adopt a faith. They had to consciously engineer a literary birth to support it. They initiated this centuries-long monastic tradition of translation, which, required building an entirely new linguistic infrastructure.
So what were the raw materials for this new infrastructure?
Well, the slide titled Roots of the Highland Tongue breaks down the underlying spoken language. It belongs to the Sino-Tibetan language family, specifically branching into the Tibeto-Burman group. And the linguistic lineage here is super important. The emergence of the spoken Tibetan language utilized a very rich system of vowels and consonants that are characteristic of the Tibeto-Burman group.
Okay.
But having a spoken language with rich sounds is entirely different from having a written script that's actually capable of capturing the metaphysical nuances of Indian Buddhist scriptures.
Which brings us to the actual invention of their alphabet. I really want to look at the slide titled A Script Forged for the Sacred. It feels like they basically had to invent a highly complex, custom programming language for the sole purpose of downloading an entire religion.
That is a brilliant way to put it.
Right, because they couldn't just use whatever local trade symbols existed at the time.
No, that analogy fits perfectly. The Tibetan script was not an organic evolution born out of merchants tallying grain or counting yaks over thousands of years.
Yeah.
As the slide details, it was derived from the 7th century ancient Indian Brahmi script.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, it was purposely engineered for the monumental task of translating sacred texts. Because Indian Buddhist concepts required highly specific vocabulary and grammatical structures, the Tibetan script had to be designed from the ground up to accommodate that heavy intellectual weight.
And the source imagery shows it is written horizontally, and it's incredibly ornate. Like, visually, it is aesthetically complex. But here's the most astonishing part to me. This specialized sacred operating system didn't stay locked in the monasteries. It's still used today as the primary liturgical, educational, and daily language of the plateau.
It really highlights the durability of their cultural engineering, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
A script designed specifically to converse with the divine eventually became the heartbeat of everyday life. The sacred and the mundane share the exact same architectural foundation.
But the way they actually speak this language threw me for a complete loop when I read this. The slide titled The Mechanics of the Spoken Word details the phonetics, and it explicitly notes that unlike many neighboring Sino-Tibetan languages, which are, heavily tonal, Tibetan has no tones.
Right, no tones at all.
Which makes sense. If you're communicating across vast, windswept valleys, relying on subtle tonal shifts seems incredibly dangerous. Like a sudden gust of wind could literally change the meaning of your entire sentence.
That is an excellent way to conceptualize the environmental pressure on language. If pitch is easily distorted by the harsh physical environment, a language must rely on structural rigidity instead.
Okay.
So, while it lacks tones, the spoken language compensates with a highly rich system of vowels and complex consonants. But the slide points to an even more vital mechanism, the social code.
Oh, the honorifics.
Yes. Tibetan employs a highly intricate honorific system denoting deep social respect.
So your vocabulary literally changes depending on who you're talking to, constantly reinforcing the social hierarchy and mutual respect. In an environment where community cohesion is literally life or death, your grammar forces you to be polite and deferential.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The language constantly weaves the social safety net. And importantly, this isn't a monolith. The slide breaks down 3 main spoken dialects.
Let's hear them.
There's Central Tibetan, utilized around Lhasa, Kham, spoken in the rugged eastern regions, and Amdo, found in the northeastern pastoral highlands.
Got it.
The sheer physical distance and impassable mountains isolate these populations, causing the spoken dialects to drift. Yet, because that engineered written script is standardized, a nomad from Amdo and a farmer from Lhasa remain tethered to the exact same literary and spiritual source.
The script is the anchor. So having built this massive linguistic infrastructure to import Buddhism, how did the faith actually take root? The next slide, titled The 4 Pillars of Tibetan Buddhism, outlines the religion as the cultural bedrock.
It places a massive emphasis on prayer, deep meditation and rigorous monastic learning.
And the materials impartially break down the four main schools, right? Gelug, Nyingma, Kagyu, and Sakya.
Evolving from those initial Indian traditions, these four schools represent different mechanisms of maintaining the faith. The Gelug school is noted as the tradition of the Dalai Lama, the high-ranking religious and historically political leader.
Right, the one most people have heard of.
Exactly. The Yinga represents the ancient translation lineage. Sakya focuses heavily on scholarship and pure lineage. But consider the Kagyu school, which emphasizes oral transmission.
Oral transmission.
Yeah. In a landscape where physical libraries might be separated by weeks of treacherous, snow-blocked mountain passes, passing sacred knowledge directly from master to student through rigorous oral memorization is a profound survival mechanism for the knowledge itself.
Wow, it basically turns the human mind into a decentralized, weatherproof library. That is incredible. But the way this faith interacts with the physical world isn't just internal memorization. The slide titled Kinetic Prayers. The word in motion introduces something that challenges how a lot of people view spirituality.
The prayer wheels.
Yeah, it focuses on the Mani cylinder. You don't just read the prayer silently, you physically engineer it into the physical world. The wheel houses hundreds of tightly rolled scrolls of written mantras, and the exterior is wrapped in embossed sacred script.
The mechanic here is fascinating. By spinning the wheel clockwise, the practitioner is said to physically release the prayers into the world. It merges bodily movement with linguistic blessing.
But wait, if daily survival on the plateau is so brutally difficult, requiring you to conserve every single calorie just to stay warm, why expend so much physical energy spinning heavy wooden cylinders? Or, as the source points out, engaging in the race.
Right, the community walking competitions.
Yeah, friendly competitions to see who can spin the wheel the most. Doesn't that totally contradict the biological need to conserve energy?
It seems counterintuitive until you view it through the lens of communal psychology and, well, the automation of spiritual merit.
Automation.
Yeah. First, the wheel itself is a form of spiritual automation. The physical rotation multiplies the prayer exponentially, generating vast amounts of merit without requiring the practitioner to vocalize every single syllable.
Oh, that makes sense.
Second, the race infuses a solemn spiritual duty with playfulness and community bonding. In a deeply isolating environment, the psychological warmth generated by a friendly, kinetic community gathering is just as vital as caloric warmth.
That makes total sense. You're staving off isolation by turning prayer into a communal physical activity. And speaking of physical mechanisms for prayer, the next slide is titled Anatomy of the Lungta, and it breaks down the famous Tibetan prayer flags.
These are iconic.
Right. And if you're listening to this on your commute, think about how we use the physical space around us. We put up billboards along the highway to sell products. The Tibetan culture effectively puts up banners to let the wind itself act as a vehicle for the written word, carrying spiritual blessings across the high altitudes.
It delegates the act of prayer to the environment itself. The wind reads the flags, and the materials emphasize a strict elemental code to these flags. They aren't just colorful decorations.
Right. The colors mean something.
Very much so. Blue symbolizes the sky and space. White represents the air and wind. Red is fire. Green is water. And yellow symbolizes the earth.
It's a complete thermodynamic representation of the natural world fluttering in the wind. All of these symbols serve to visually tie the identity of the people to the harsh landscape they inhabit. This is further represented on the slide titled Emblems of the Snows.
Yes, the symbols of collective identity.
Exactly. It outlines these symbols, prominently featuring the mythical snow lion, representing supreme courage and the unyielding spirit of the high mountains.
And based strictly on the provided materials, this slide also details the snow lion flag. It describes the design impartially as featuring the sun, snowy mountains, 2 snow lions, and radiating colored rays. The source explicitly notes its stated function as the primary symbol of the Tibetan exile movement.
Got it. So we have a culture deeply unified by language, symbols, and a physically active spirituality. But let's bring the conversation back down to the frozen earth for a moment. How did the people actually generate the calories to survive out there? The slide titled The Livelihood Matrix outlines a really brilliant dual system of survival.
The environment demands absolute versatility. On one side of the matrix, the source outlines nomadic pastoralism, which is adapted for the open, high-altitude steppes. They rely on yaks, sheep, and goats.
And their houses move with them, right?
Yes. Their architecture reflects constant mobility, using portable black tents woven entirely from durable yak hair.
It's perfectly modular. If a storm is coming or the grass runs out, you just pack up your entire house and move. And on the other side of the matrix, you have settled agriculture in the sheltered Highland valleys. They cultivate cold-resistant crops, primarily Highland barley, and live in permanent insulative structures built from natural stone and earth.
What is critical to understand here is the symbiosis. These are not competing factions.
Okay.
They're complementary strategies designed to maximize the carrying capacity of an extreme environment. The nomads utilize the marginal grasslands that cannot be farmed, converting tough scrub into high-density fat and protein through the yak.
Makes sense.
And the farmers maximize the caloric output of the protected valleys. Then, they trade with one another to form a complete dietary profile.
And to survive in either of those microenvironments, you need serious thermal technology. The slide titled Technologies of the Cold gets into the thermodynamics of their survival gear. The caloric bedrock of their diet is sampa, or roasted barley flour, along with butter tea and yak cheese.
Nutrition really is the primary technology against the cold. Mixing roasted barley flour with yak butter and tea isn't just a meal. It's an emulsion of dense fat, immediate carbohydrates, and hydration.
Like the ultimate energy bar.
Exactly. Because the barley is pre-roasted, it requires minimal fuel to prepare on the road, which is a vital feature when high-altitude fuel sources like yak dung are incredibly scarce.
It's ancient, high-efficiency survival rations. And then you have the chuba. This is a heavy, long robe perfectly adapted for sub-zero winds. But it's not just a thick coat. It's basically an adaptable microclimate.
Yeah, the source notes it functions perfectly for both riding a yak or working in a field.
Right, you can wrap it tight when the wind howls, or loosen it during the intense midday high-altitude sun. Furthermore, the slide stresses the absolute necessity of preserved provisions to endure the long, barren winters.
Because without the ability to preserve dairy and meat, the long winters would just be unsurvivable. But, the harshness of this physical reality brings us to perhaps the most surprising insight in the entire presentation.
Yeah, this part is amazing. The slide titled, Joy in the Thin Air, paints a picture of a culture that refuses to just grimly survive. Despite the freezing cold, the barren winters, and the oxygen deprivation, the society is incredibly vibrant. The materials highlight Losar, the Tibetan New Year, as a critical annual festival of renewal, alongside sacred monastic masked dances.
Psychological survival is just as important as caloric survival. The slide points to the communal joy of Yangar and Gorshi, which are these chanted circle dances.
And the games, too.
Yes, they also engage in traditional competitive games. There is Korkor, a game of throwing wooden rings onto pegs, and Lakpa, an intense team ball-chasing game.
Again, expending physical energy in an environment where calories are super scarce, it really shows that play and celebration are not optional luxuries. They are fundamental technologies for maintaining sanity, social cohesion, and joy through long, isolating winters.
It prevents the culture from fracturing under the weight of its own environment.
Absolutely. Well, we are nearing the end of our journey through these materials, and the final source images give us a brilliant wrap-up of everything we've unpacked today. The slide, titled An Enduring Highland Heritage: The Cycle, maps out an incredible continuous feedback loop.
It visualizes the entire system perfectly.
Yeah.
The extreme land dictates the life, forcing the creation of the heavy chuba, the dense sampa, and the dual pastoral agricultural survival system.
And then that life and the introduction of a complex faith demanded the word. They had an urgent need to translate Buddhist scriptures, which forged the highly specific Tibetan script.
And finally, the word blesses the land. The language is embossed onto mani wheels and printed on Lungta flags, physically spun and blown back into the harsh highland winds, completing the cycle.
Which brings us to the core thesis of the entire presentation. The final slide, titled An Enduring Highland Heritage: The Synthesis, delivers the ultimate takeaway.
This final slide answers the big so what of our entire analysis. It states unequivocally that Tibetan culture is not merely a collection of isolated traits. It is a profound, indivisible synthesis of spiritual devotion, linguistic heritage, and Highland resilience. You cannot extract the mountains from the religion, and you cannot extract the language from their daily physical survival. It functions as one unified, incredibly resilient ecosystem.
It totally reorients how you view human adaptation. It shows that culture isn't just something that happens on top of a landscape, it has grown entirely out of it.
It really leaves us with a profound concept to mull over. We often treat our minds, our languages, and our spiritual beliefs as abstract concepts, entirely separate from the physical dirt and weather around us.
Right, like they exist in a vacuum.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And consider how deeply our physical environment shapes our most abstract ideas. For the Tibetan people, the extreme altitude didn't just dictate their agriculture. It necessitated a unique alphabet. It color-coded the 5 elements of their prayers. And it quite literally gave them the thermodynamic mechanism to release their spirituality into the howling wind. It makes you pause and wonder how much our own modern landscapes, our concrete valleys and digital winds, are quietly shaping the way we think, speak, and believe every single day.
That is a truly remarkable perspective to carry with you. We've traced this incredible system from the geological extremes of the Himalayan plateau all the way down to the kinetic spinning of a wooden prayer wheel. I hope this exploration has given you a newfound appreciation for the deep, undeniable interconnectedness of the Tibetan people and their environment.
Thank you for watching until the end. We will continue to bring you many more languages from around the world. Please subscribe to our channel. See you next time on the Linglobe channel.